Hello students, this is Krochmal and we're ready to start Learning Module 3, ICM 501, Issues in Contemporary Media, Fall 2015. Review quickly. Last week we went over the timeline of technology through history, all the way from the caves 40,000 years ago, drawings on the cave walls, to 2020 when we'll see the advent of the Internet of Things and the growth that we've seen in the last 20 years. So going forward in media discussions, remember the evolution of media and the velocity of change we have seen over the last 20 years. You should have an idea of the prevalent technology by era. This week, we're talking about the global digital village, social disruption and change, online megaphones. We'll look at social movements, digitally fueled social movements, constructing change, and supporting community. The question is, can digital communications change the world? Can you change the world? So let's look at some of the social movements, some historical context here. So, no taxation without representation. It was a rallying cry for the founding of the American Republic, and it started in 1765 to the present. The battle is still on over taxes. Are we to pay too much taxes? Do we want services? We have to pay for them somehow. Or is it just organized robbery that comes, institutionalized robbery? States' rights. From 2008 to the present, states have been asserting themselves with things like lifting the prohibition on marijuana, health care. There's the division between the states that's ongoing. Has it been successful? Women's rights, civil rights, the environmental movement, and there's more and more. And not all of them have a digital component. Have they been successful? How have they been successful? Think about that. So let's go back to 1968. The revolution was televised, and this is a sort of a quick case study. So the media atmosphere in 1968, there were 3 television networks. Educational TV channels existed. PBS had started in 1967. There was no cable as we know it today. There were 14 million color TV sets in America's homes, made in America and costing about $400 to $500 each. Sylvania may be a name you might remember. The program 60 Minutes debuted in 1968. Primetime television watching went from black and white to color. The TV audience could be as big as 90 million people. The household income at that time was about $7,700. In Vietnam, the war in Vietnam was the first living room war. You could go to your TV set at 6:30, turn on and hear Walter Cronkite. And when Walter Cronkite reported a negative report on the war in Vietnam, it did not look good for the administration at the time. So I was thinking, what are the news for that year? Martin Luther King was slain in April in Memphis. Bobby Kennedy was killed in Los Angeles. He was running for the presidency. And then President Johnson, when he said, I've lost Walter Cronkite, who was the Uncle Walter, the most trusted newsman in America, when he did negative reports on Vietnam, Johnson said, I've lost the American people. He decided he would not run for re-election. And so we look at Chicago, where the Democratic National Convention was held. As I was thinking about this lecture, I was thinking about how do we know things have changed? Well, there was a song, Chicago, We Can Change the World. And it really came out of the Democratic National Convention in 1968 in Chicago, where there was really a lot of friction between yippies, the new left, and the Chicago Police Department around the Democratic Convention. So we have scenes of the Chicago police using billy clubs on the convention floor, and an 18-minute riot outside of the Hilton in Chicago where the police attacked the demonstrators. What happened was 8 people who were seen as ringleaders were tried for inciting to riot, and they were convicted. Most of the convictions were overturned in other higher courts. It was a bit of a travesty. Bobby Seale, who's the Black Panther chairman and founder, was in one of the Chicago 8. He couldn't be represented by his lawyer because of a medical issue. Came on at the last minute, asked to represent himself. The judge said no, and Bobby took umbrage to that and became very vocal and really obnoxious in the courtroom. The court judge, who may not have been the equal balance of justice, still was very vindictive and sentenced him to 4 years. Of all the sentences, this was the one that stuck. 4 years for contempt of court. The others were bound over to higher courts and they were released. So listen to the song, Chicago, We Can Change the World. Did they change the world? I don't know, but when the police rioted at 18 minutes, it was prime time, and an audience of 90 million saw this, and you could hear the chant, the whole world is watching. Media, social movements change. Let's move forward to 2011, and this was a year there was quite a lot of uprisings throughout the world. Let's take a look. This is from the BBC, and we have the Egyptian Revolution in February and March, the start of Arab Spring, the royal wedding in May. Bin Laden was killed later on. Amy Winehouse died sad. There were riots in England. The UK embassy was attacked. Gaddafi died in Libya. He was killed. The world was in upheaval. Social movements. A little closer to home in New York City, where I live, we had Occupy Wall Street, taking Zuccotti Park downtown. And then all of these added up to Time declaring the protester was the person of the year. Time, and a way of Time looking at the year and saying this is the year of the protester. So in 2010, Malcolm Gladwell, the famous Malcolm Gladwell, writing in the New Yorker magazine, declared, "The world we are told is in the midst of revolution. The new tools of social media have reinvented social activism. Facebook, Twitter, and the like. The traditional relationship between political authority and popular will has been upended, making it easier for the powerless to collaborate, coordinate, and give voice to their concerns." He concluded that activism that challenges the status quo, that attacks deeply rooted problems, is not for the faint of heart. And it isn't. Just because you can tweet, you can status, you can live stream from your demonstration, that doesn't add up to social change, was his contention. It takes hard work and willingness to sacrifice. So here, it takes more than a tweet, basically what the headline is saying. And you also have to give a hat tip to Gil Scott-Heron, who wrote "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." This was in the 60s and the 70s, and that's certainly a hat tip there. The link is live on the slide deck. I'll be sharing that with you. You can engage with it if you like. So 2011, all these social movements involving digital. Manuel Castells wrote a book, and he's a scientist. He wrote a social scientist. He wrote a book, Networks of Outrage and Hope. And early in the book, he talks about certainly these social movements are not created by technology. Technology in itself doesn't produce anything. It's a technology that we've included in the fabric of society, in our culture, our politics, which really has become significant. So who is Manuel Castells? He is the Wallace Annenberg Chair in Communications Technology and Society at the University of Southern California. And he spoke at a Library of Congress webcast in October of 2012. The link is here. You can look at the link. You can click and there's a transcript. It's about an 85-minute long seminar lecture with the Library of Congress. Now, what he did was he studied these movements. He did field research, Occupy, Arab Spring, and then he used his research, he compiled it into the book. The lecture, he spoke about what he had learned. So he starts with the idea that for the last 20 years, there's been a shift from mass communication to mass self-communication. These new networks are multimodal. They're interacting, and the messages can be self-directed, self-created, self-retrieved, and self-combined. These messages are very powerful within these new networks. There's much less control than ever in history on the part of the established powers, the political or economic or media corporations. They don't have the power they used to. But there is surveillance. So if you're the messenger, it's a problem. But if you are the message, you live forever and you don't care. Now, let's talk a little bit about the social psychology behind this. The good professor writes that emotions are the motivation of human behavior, and fear is the most fundamental emotion of human life. Fear is overcome by sharing and identifying with others. If you're scared, you want to share that I am scared. We hold hands in the internet. We get together in the internet. We share, we identify. And just by being together, not agreeing on anything, just agreeing that we're angry, on the anger, not agreeing on a program, not voting for a party, just we agree we're all angry. And then by sharing anger, but sharing it together through togetherness, fear is overcome. The professor describes a process, and it starts with the fear and coming together through the networks. And there's a process of mobilization. And then through mobilization, there's an unleashing of a very potent positive emotion, enthusiasm. Let's talk about how networks work. So networks are within a movement, but there are other aligned with other movements in the world, with the internet blogosphere, with the media, with society at large. Network technologies are essential because they provide the platform for continuing expensive networking practice that evolves with the changing shape of the movement. The movement evolves. The networks in the internet evolve easily without anything needing to be decided upon or agreed upon. Moreover, they do not need a formal leadership and no command and control center. They organize themselves in terms of the decision. You kill one node in the network, the characteristic of the network is they reproduce themselves. Other nodes appear. You can't stomp out by going one node. They're underground. They emerge. They all go down, but they are all connected all the time. The networking of the movement protects the movement, not only against repression, but against its own threats of bureaucratization and manipulation. The more you want to be leader, the less you will be the leader. It's the nature of networks. And the professor decides that these movements are urban, at least the ones he studied in 2011. Togetherness is fundamental, and it requires at some point the most direct expression of emotional bonding, he says. When you are together, you share the danger and you share space, you share a new form of being together in the city. And then something else happens. Just by being there, you're part of the movement, simply by being there. Technically speaking, the professor says, in these movements, they always have a simple norm. If we are 20, they're going to kill us. If we are 2,000, much less. And if we are 20,000, they will let us be, as long as we're 20,000. Maybe that's the professor's rule. These movements are local and global at the same time. They rise from local conditions, local culture, local values in their own terms, in their own language, and rooted into the specific conditions that provoke their outrage. They have different faiths. They have different political orientation. They have different relationships to gender, to class, to race. They are local. But at the same time, they immediately connect to the world, and they immediately bring problems of the world into their discussion, into their debates. They are both things at the same time. They are local and global as the internet is local and it is global. So we've looked at 2011 and what's happened there, and a great analysis based on research, based on data that the professor could look at. He's a social scientist, so it bears paying attention to. So let's take it from there. We'll go on to the next. So what happens when you try to emulate what these movements are in a more commercial space? So Social at Ogilvy is part of the Ogilvy agency, and in March of 2013, Social at Ogilvy conducted a research study on building social movements for brands. And this is really kind of commercialization. But what they did is they looked at 50 movements and kind of analyzed them through the use of social in there. So let's take a look at it. Now, Ogilvy determined that there's three levels. There's the entertainment, there's political, and then there's brand movement. So let's start with entertainment. And they call it a phenomenon. And they determined that building movements is hard work. As we said, Malcolm Gladwell, this is also echoing that. It's hard work. The collaboration and communication advantages of digital and social platforms have reduced the overall cost of organizing supporters, but not the overall complexity of the task. So entertainment. You have Justin Bieber, the Kardashians, Gangnam Style. They induce social actions counted in the billions. What is a social action? Liking a page, being a fan, being a follower. Those are all social actions, and Social at Ogilvy counted all those similarly. Every action, they just counted it, so they get a gross total. So you have entertainment phenomena. The next level, so entertainment's billions. The next level is political movements, and they looked in particular at the social around the U.S. presidential elections 2008 and 2012. They said they measured social action counting in the hundreds of millions. So they looked at the Obama campaign. What did Obama do? They spent money wisely. In June of 2012, the campaign had already spent $31 million in online advertising, 4 times what the opponent, Mitt Romney, had spent in the same period of time. At the end of the year, the two campaigns had spent between $400 and $490 million. But here was a front loader. Why do they do it? They want to use paid media, buy advertising to grow the member base and to drive social actions. Now, the campaign really had a smart use of technology, not just social media. So they use CRM, which is an enterprise software for big companies to use, customer relationship management. It handles all aspects of a relationship, at least the paper part, the data, not the soft part, but the hard parts of dealing with customers and keeping track of things. And they connected it to socials. They could understand who was here and who was there, and be able to make things together, putting databases together. They worked owned media, earned media, and paid media together. Paid media is advertising. Earned media is the media you get coverage or op-eds or people just liking you on Facebook and saying, I'm voting for Obama, I'm voting. That's earned media. And then owned media is the media you produce. Your blog posts, your tweets, your op-eds, you give opinion pieces. They put all that together. And they use data to find and activate key opinion leaders. When they did this in 2008, they came back in 2012 and improved on it. Different kind of a campaign when you're running for re-election, as opposed to trying to get a candidate who really came out of nowhere to win the election. And part of it was the use of this. And how did that look like when you compare the social? Well, let's take a look at the chart from the Ogilvy people. And here it is. Here's Obama in 2012 with 400 million social actions. Obama in 2008 with 100 million, 4 times. In 4 years, they grew that by order of magnitude. And then Romney in 2012 had the opportunity to learn from what Obama did in 2008 and was only able to come up with 50 actions. So 50 million social actions that were measured. So there's something to learn in that. And political movements, by comparison, just a simple comparison on the number of the social actions that could be attributed to the candidate. Brand movements, things like Earth Hour, Small Business Saturday by American Express, they produce social actions counted on in the millions. So how do you measure things? Well, size matters, fans, followers, shares. Overall reach is important too. In your social media, it's not just who your friends and followers are, but their friends and followers. So when they share something that you have said and magnify it, that's really the important part of social media. You should understand that's reach. Engagement, how people interact, how they feel. It's more than liking a page. It's like maybe commenting on a page or getting a comment back. That all builds engagement. This is the chart from Ogilvy. You can take a look at it. I'll put it on the slide share that'll be posted for you to look at. Advice for movements, and you can use this in your analysis. Understand and articulate the cause behind the movement and the actions required. What is the call for action, call to action? Successful movements are genuine and organic. Look at these movements and see if you feel like they're genuine. The girl effect, it's Nike, but it's not branded. Use simple actions and simple methods. Now, getting somebody to pour a bucket of ice water over their head and videotape it and share it on social media, that's kind of complex. Probably more than people would recommend now, but it was successful, was it not? And understand, for brand movements, it takes time and money. This is not something that will happen, not usually in 1 year. It's a prolonged campaign that costs money and labor. So we've talked about social media and social media strategy, social media managers. There's also a position called community manager, and it operates from the inside of the company. Their job is to listen, and they also serve as a contact between the online community and the organization, building relationships within the organization as well as within and connecting people. They also do strategy. They create content. They curate content. They handle incoming requests, but they also build community. They get people to join the community, to participate, especially ignite your community. They manage the assets, so the calendars. They create content and decide when it's going to be published. And they also do, and a very important part of the job is analytics, gathering and reporting from what they're building in the community. So it works from within inside, where social media might be managing a platform or might be managing across the social media, all of the platforms that an organization may be using. A community is kind of a different approach to that, but you would work with social media, you'd work with marketing, you'd work with sales, you'd work with the people in the trenches on the streets. So when you talk about a pure democracy, there's innovation happening. The idea of a pure democracy would be the Athenian democracy, where they gathered and they made decisions together, everybody, all voices. Can technology help? Is that what happens from the reincarnation of Occupy Wall Street open source software that allows everybody to connect and to take part in the decisions? Well, these four companies, Lumio, Democracy OS, Liquid Feedback, Humanity Online, they're trying to come up with technical solutions for that. And we'll see how that goes. So we've looked at social media movements, digitally fueled social movements, and we've seen the study the good professor did, how to construct change in the Ogilvy study, and then how to support community. And we've compared and contrasted community management and social management. Now that leaves us with what you have to do this week. You have 2 writing assignments. That's 2. In addition, I want to make sure to remind you to reach out to your comments and your classmates' blog submissions. So on the discussion blog, you're going to find and write about 3 examples of real change that have occurred from online social activism. Cite your sources and use visuals if possible. Give details and explanations in complete sentences. Mind your grammar, mind your style. It's important. Make sure you comment. Social change. You're going to write an essay with an annotated bibliography. You're going to analyze the effectiveness of an online social campaign for activism. How is success measured in reach and growth and in actual social change? Now, if you want to review these, you can go to Blackboard. You can see the learning module. You can read it, and make sure to remind you one more time, comment on 2 classmate blog posts. Also, mind your grammar, your style, your punctuation. Use the opportunity to do research, to not just opine, but base it on research, show your research, and take it to another level. Be critical. All right? Look forward to talking to you during the week. I'll be available on email. We can arrange a hangout. And, of course, I'll be back next week with the next lecture. This is Mo Krochmal, ICM 501 Quinnipiac.